Welcome to Missouri Law Matters, a podcast all about your Missouri courts. My name is Matt Hamner. I'm a judge on the Missouri Court of Appeals for the Southern District based in Springfield. We thank you for listening, and don't forget, like and subscribe to our podcast on all your services of choice, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Missouri Courts and the Supreme Court of Missouri's Instagram and Facebook pages. There you'll find all sorts of information about our courts, links to our podcast, and all sorts of other content that you may find enjoyable. If you get a chance, drop us comments and let us know if there's questions that you have or if there's things that you'd like to see on future episodes. I'm really excited about our episodes today, and I want to thank you all for being here. Our circuit courts in our state are some of the busiest courts that we have. The judges who work in those courts have to balance managing large caseloads and providing considered attention to the thousands and thousands of litigants who come before them each year. To talk with me a little bit about what it's like to be a judge in such a busy court, and also to talk a little bit about how she came to the law and all the exciting things that brought her here, I have an excellent guest with me today. Joining me on today's episode is Judge Jalilah Otto. She is a circuit judge in the 16th Circuit Court in Jackson County, Missouri. Judge, welcome to the show.
All right, thanks for having me, Matt. I appreciate it.
I am so excited to have you here. Now, in full disclosure, I do think I have to tell everybody that we were in law school together.
That is correct.
We have known each other for a while.
That is correct.
And I'm very excited that you agreed to come on, and very excited to talk with you a little bit about your journey and your path to the law. How many years have you been a circuit judge?
I got appointed in October of 2017 as a circuit judge.
Okay. And before that, you were an associate circuit judge there in Jackson County.
That is correct. I got on in January of 2014, and then I got elevated October of 2017. So I've been serving as a circuit judge since then.
So that's about 11 years or so on the bench.
Right.
So that's a lot of judicial experience. It's wonderful, and we appreciate your service to our judiciary. I want to talk to you a little bit about your path to the law. I always want to talk to everybody when they come on about what brought them to the law, what got them interested in it. Let's start with where you grew up and whether going into the law was always the plan.
So I can answer the second part of the question first. No, it was not the plan, but I always say I didn't choose the law chose me. So I grew up in the heart of Kansas City, and I was a public school kid through and through, and I was an avid reader. I loved to read. I was the kid who had the flashlight with the book. And when my mom was like, go to bed, I'd still be reading. So I always just loved to consume information as a young person. But I didn't really know any lawyers growing up. I didn't know where the courthouse was. I didn't know anything along that realm. So it was never a goal of mine to be a lawyer. But the people that I saw in my neighborhood that I thought got the most respect were the teachers. And so I adored my teachers, and I thought I was going to, at some point, become a teacher. There was a slight chance I thought I might be a doctor, but I do not do well with bodily fluids at all. That went off the table pretty quickly. But I think it was always something education, something teacher related that I thought I would eventually get into.
Excellent. Now, you grew up in Kansas City area, is that right?
Yeah.
Public school kid, as you said. So eventually you're getting out of high school and you're graduating, and you're thinking about going to college. At that point, teaching is the plan?
Teaching, or even medical school, I think was maybe in the back of my mind. But I'm from a very humble background. So I think my primary goal growing up in Kansas City was to get out of Kansas City. I think that was my main goal. My mom had a lot of rules, or my parents were strict. My father was ex-military, so there were just a lot of rules in our house. And so I was like, I really want to just get away from Kansas City, go someplace I've never been before. And I found a school in New Orleans I wanted to attend called Tulane University, and go Green Wave. And so the only way I knew I was going to make it to the Green Wave was to get some kind of opportunities and scholarships. And so I was a really diligent student, and I worked really hard. There's a thing called an International Baccalaureate Diploma that was big on the horizon then. And so I was pursuing that. And so just worked really hard, got an opportunity to go down to Tulane University. I did my undergrad down there. And the funny thing about the school is they actually did not have an education major at the time. So you see how diligent I was in researching that. So I was trying to figure my way through undergrad. And so I ended up studying communications and political science. So my major was political communications, and there was so much overlap with political science. I just double majored in both of those. And so I read a lot, wrote a lot. And my senior year, the plan was to do Teach for America. It was a brand new program back then. And so I'm like, this sounds interesting. And what happened was a good friend of mine was pre-law, and they were doing a free LSAT on campus. And she was really nervous about taking the test. And it was a Saturday morning, and she said, will you please come with me to take this test? She'd asked me a couple of days before. And I'm like, no, but Okay, yes, because I want you to be successful. If you think I'm going to help you be less nervous, I will go and take the test with you. It's crazy when you think about it. I went and took the test and I did really well on the test. And so the proctor was like, have you thought about going to law school? And I said, I had not thought about going to law school. And this had to be in November of my senior year. So we're doing the real test. It's going to be recorded in about 2 weeks. Come back, do the real test. I did the real test. 2 weeks later, I got one of those little books you would get from the library. Studied the book for 2 weeks, took the test. Over Christmas break, I applied to law school, got accepted into Mizzou Law School, and the rest is history. So
That is crazy.
it's
To
wild,
just
crazy.
walk in and decide to take the LSAT on a whim.
Yeah, it was wildly crazy. And so I always say the law chose me because it was not in my path at all. But I think just because I was just an avid reader and writer, I just think I was a pretty good, strong test taker. And so when I went off to law school, because I hadn't been like pre-law, I hadn't done any of the moot court things, I felt like in law school, I was learning a foreign language. Everything it was not familiar to me, the way the words that people spoke and the concepts I could get behind, but just the vernacular, there's some Latin in there and different things. So it really felt very foreign when I first got there. And I wondered if I had made the right decision.
The law, I tell people all the time, the law is a specialized profession and then it has its own language.
Yeah.
A lot of the concepts can be similar to other things. It's like anything else. It's got its own kind of lexicon. And until you're comfortable with that nomenclature and the words, it can be a little daunting.
Yeah.
But that is just a crazy story.
It's
That
a
is
crazy
so
story.
cool.
Yeah.
Now, before we get to the law school piece of it, because I want to talk to you about your time at Mizzou and how you enjoyed that. What was it like going from Kansas City, from living in KC, to moving to New Orleans?
Exactly as you imagine. It's exactly as you imagine. And this was all pre-Katrina, like before the hurricane.
Before the hurricane.
And it was just a wide open city then. It had its own pulse and heartbeat. The people were so kind. The food was so good. The city never slept. From a Midwestern girl like me, I probably bit off a little more than I could chew. Initially, the parties would go on, and there was so much live music. I got a little distracted academically from time to time, but got back on track. But I love that city. I do. It's a great place.
It is a wonderful
It's a wonderful town. It's a wonderful town. And I can't imagine going to school and coming of age anywhere other than there. And then you mentioned going to Mizzou. I remember when I got into Mizzou, I was like, I wonder what it's going to be different than New Orleans, which wasn't a bad thing because you need to study. Law school is extremely academic and you put in very long hours to learn all the things that you need to learn. And I knew it was going to be different. But when I got to Columbia, I loved Columbia. I did. It was such an energetic town. People were very kind, very welcoming. And so I really enjoyed my time at Mizzou.
Did you have any reservations about coming back to Missouri after having been away for so long?
Honestly, yes, I did. I didn't really have a desire to come back to Missouri, but I also didn't have a desire to stay in New Orleans either. I thought maybe I would probably wind up in DC or somewhere along the East Coast. I had some family over that way, and I thought, well, maybe that's where I would end up at. And I still love the DC area. But I didn't hesitate because I thought it was a great opportunity to be able to go to Mizzou, to go to law school. I didn't think I was going to get back to Kansas City. I thought I'd go to law school and then still matriculate back over to the East Coast, and that just didn't happen. Life has all kind of twists and turns. So.
It's funny how that gravitational pull happens.
It does.
So you end up back in Missouri at law school. And what'd you enjoy the most about your time at law school?
The people. I enjoyed it. I got really involved in various organizations when I was there. I just always get into the extracurricular kind of stuff. And like I said, I think the material for me was just confusing. And I really had to question, was this the right place? And so I think once I got involved in organizations and made friends, I'm like, okay, this is the place for me. I do enjoy it. And the professors and the deans, everybody there was very helpful. I feel like everybody wanted me to succeed. And you put in some really long hours. They used to have those carols on the second and third floor of the library. And I'd be sitting there just studying, and you look out the window and they're playing Frisbee on the quad out there. And you're just standing there and studying. I enjoyed my time at Mizzou. I do think I have one claim to fame about Mizzou.
I'm ready.
I can be wrong about this, but I believe I'm the only student who has attended Mizzou who has never gone to a football or a basketball game. That's how much I studied. I never went to a single football or a single basketball game, and I don't think there's any other Mizzou alumni who can say that or willing to admit that, I would probably say.
That is dedication to your studies. But I'm sure you kept track.
I did. I kept track. I never just went to the event. I would just be in that library all the time.
Now, very successful at Mizzou Law. You end up back there. You graduate around 02, I think.
02. 2002.
So at that point, you've got a law degree. You've had a very successful career. You're a very talented person. You, I'm sure, had opportunities all over the place. You've not wanted to go back to KC for any reason.
Yeah.
How did you end up back there?
I met a guy.
Oh,
And actually I got married in law school. So my third year of law school, I got married and then moved back to Kansas City. And funny thing is he grew up there also. And he thought we would go someplace else. And then we ended up just getting married and starting a family. And so that's what brought us back. My parents were very helpful in those early years. And so I couldn't imagine not being in Kansas City when you're going through all of that. So it was this natural progression back to Kansas City. And in Kansas City, it's a wonderful place to raise a family. It is. It's a big enough city where it's a city, but there's also a small town feel. It's not East Coast fast. It's got a lot going on if you want enough going on. And so that's what got me back to Kansas City.
I spent 5 years in Kansas City after my first adult job, as I would call it, was in Kansas City. And I used to tell people all the time, it's the biggest small town you've ever been to.
I agree.
It really does have that feel, and particularly the legal community, I think.
I agree.
It's got a wonderful bar up there. And I'm sure they embraced you with open arms when you came back. And what is it, once you went back, what did you decide to do when you got there?
So I had the same job as an intern after the second year of law school, and then after the third year as well. And that was the Court of Appeals. There was a wonderful man named Hal Lowenstein, who was my very first legal boss. And I met him at Mizzou. He came down for brown bag lunch, and he was talking about appellate work in the Court of Appeals and what they did. And it was fascinating to me. And so after he got done introducing himself and talk about what he did, I just went up to him at the end and introduced myself and told him I was from Kansas City. And he was like, why don't you come and see if you want to work for me over Christmas break? And I was like, are you serious? He's, yeah, come on down. So I did. That was my first legal job. I interned with Judge Hal Lowenstein at the Court of Appeals over winter break. I came back the following summer. And so when it was time for me to graduate, I was looking for a position, and there was a woman who had just been appointed to the Court of Appeals, and she was hiring a law clerk. And I thought, hey, this is a great opportunity. And her name was Lisa White Hardwick. So I went and clerked for Judge Hardwick right after law school. And I was with her for about three and a half years. And I enjoyed appellate work. I know you've had different judges on here talking about the things they do, but I enjoyed the diversity of the work: criminal, civil, domestic, administrative, workers' comp. You did
Probate,
probate, everything. You was so diverse. You could tap into all of these things, and you would read these transcripts, and you get immersed. It's like reading a book. You get immersed in what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really enjoyed that. The nerd in me probably crept out when I was over there. And so I enjoyed being at the Court of Appeals and just the camaraderie there. I feel like I grew so much because I was exposed to so very much as a young lawyer.
And certainly I'm appreciative of your experience with that. I was also a law clerk, and there's a lot of people that don't know that really our appellate judges are incredible people across the board in all of the appellate courts that we have, but they couldn't do what they do without incredible law clerks, without young people who can come in and help them, because the law is so thick and so dense that it is more than one person can just dig through and sort out in all these various areas. And our law clerks at the appellate level really are such a godsend to us. They're such an important piece of what we do. And I'm so glad that you had that experience.
Oh, yeah. They're learning. And so I think they have a thirst for knowledge. And then being just a young lawyer, you're trying to be as meticulous as you can be. And with all the writing that appellate judges do, you need meticulous and thoroughness. And so I think the skills that I learned there really have helped me throughout the course of my career. Just learning how to be a thorough writer, learning how to read in depth, being disciplined enough to sit there and read the PSC, all these things that, very voluminous work. It's just interesting how these kind of legal concepts that seem independent always conflate together in these cases and real world scenarios. And so I just really enjoyed that.
So once you get done clerking, you move out into the profession, you start practicing a little bit.
I did.
What kind of things did you do when you were practicing on your own?
So when I was at the Court of Appeals, I did everything, but the cases I kept getting drawn to were criminal cases. They moved fast. There was no shortage of something interesting or unexpected happening. And I knew that was the realm I wanted to be in. I wanted to try cases, which it was never anything I was really into in law school. Again, I didn't do moot court or anything like that. But when I started looking at public defender's office and the prosecutor's office in Jackson County. And so I said, I think I want to do criminal law. And I could see both sides of the issue, right? I could see the constitutionality on both sides of it. And so I applied to both the public defender's and the prosecutor's office. And so I'm like, we'll just see what happens. and whoever picks me, that's where I'll go. And of course, as life has it, they both offer me a job, right? So no, back on you. You have to decide. And so I think it was kind of one of those defining moments in my career. And what I realized as I went back through just my background and my experience is I saw a lot growing up in the city, and working with victims really pulled on my heartstrings. I know a lot of folks are victims of crime, and sometimes they're locked out of the system and they don't have a voice, and they don't feel like they have a voice, and they have more questions than answers. And so I wanted to be a person who was going to be able to provide a voice to the voiceless. I wanted to be able to work with those people who had suffered atrocities and help them put the pieces back together again. So prosecution it was. That's where I went off to. And so I went to Jackson County Prosecutor's Office, started off in the drug unit. Then I went down to the domestic violence unit and tried every kind of case you can imagine, from driving with a revoked license up to double homicides, drive-by shootings. I tried a tremendous amount of cases and got to work with a tremendous amount of folks in the Kansas City community and really bring something back to the community that helped raise me. And so that meant a lot to me, to be right there in downtown Kansas City, trying to help folks just like the people I grew up with in school, in the neighborhoods and things. So it's awesome.
That's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. And you prosecuted both in Jackson County, and then at some point you also ended up prosecuting cases for the federal office, the U.S. District Attorney's Office in Kansas City, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So I was, let me think, oh my goodness, so long ago, 5+ years in Jackson County, and then got the opportunity to go to the U.S. Attorney's Office and prosecute cases federally, which I really also enjoyed. We did a lot of drug conspiracies and criminal networks. And so on the western half of the state, so it wasn't just Jackson County. I was all the way up in Buchanan County and all of these various counties I'd never been to before, and met some wonderful people along the way, and worked a lot with the ATF and the DEA and the FBI on those cases, and made as much of a dent as I could make. And then got an opportunity to do both at the same time. But I think they call it cross-designated. I was cross-designated to do both the state and the federal cases for a little bit. And so I did that until the next gig came along. And so I enjoyed that.
Before we get to the next gig, I do want to follow one question. For those that are listening, what's the biggest difference, would you say, for those that are listening? If somebody asks, what's the biggest difference between handling cases at the federal level versus handling cases at the state level from a prosecutorial standpoint?
So if you think about the state level, I would say it is a very reactionary office. And so by that, a murder happens, the police investigate, they arrest a suspect, and they bring the case file to you as a prosecutor. And so crimes you're going to do on the state side are your arsons, rapes, robberies, assaults, murders, GWIs, these kinds of things. And so a crime occurs, we react, the prosecutor files charges, tries the case, and then the court decides. So that's on the state side. The federal side, I would say it's more proactive. And so you work closely with those agencies I mentioned, like the FBI and the ATF and DEA, to identify a target. Let's say there's a large quantity of drugs moving through a certain community. And so you're trying to, they would say, swim upstream, like you're trying to figure out where the drugs are coming from. And I mean, we prosecuted just about any and every type of person. And so we'd have to extradite somebody back to the United States. We want them to come back here to prosecute them. And so you were very much always trying to guide this, what's the next thing? Where does the criminal activity really begin? And so you're much more proactive in determining who's going to get charged, what they're going to get charged with. You still try the case. And the great thing about the Western District of Missouri, not only you try the case, you handle your own appeals. You don't do that on the state side. The Attorney General's office handles the appeals. But I got to handle appeals to the 8th Circuit at the U.S. Attorney's Office. So they're different. You need like a nexus, like people are crossing state lines or crossing county lines or moving large quantities of drugs. One case I remember about a guy who had a private jet, and he would fly down to the border and fly the drugs back up here. When he was on the stand testifying, he's like, but I paid my taxes, so you can't get me on tax evasion. You got bigger fish to fry here, guy. But yeah, so it was nice because I do think that also had a tremendous impact on the community. So you weren't just dealing with a violent criminal, you were dealing with people, again, that were bringing plane loads full of drugs into various communities throughout the Western District of Missouri. And so to really put a kibosh on that was really fulfilling.
Yeah, the scope of those types of offenses is large, and wow. And that's just wonderful experience to get to have, to work with those agencies and investigate crimes of that type. But at
some
you
point.
decided you wanted to do something different. What is it that drew you to maybe potentially being a judge, and how did that come about?
Again, I feel like my whole story is somebody brought something to me. I had so much reverence for the judges that I appeared in front of at the Western District and in Jackson County, and I'd worked with at the Court of Appeals. I never really allowed myself to dream that could be me. I just didn't. I never dreamt big enough. I would say I wish I could go back and tell my younger self, dream bigger and even bigger and then even bigger. But I just didn't. I didn't do that. And someone said to me just one day, "Have you ever thought about becoming a judge?" And I was like, I don't know, maybe. It's not something I really allowed myself to think. I hadn't really thought about that. And they said, think about it. And if you are interested, I'll help you. And they did. And a number of people helped me along the way to get to the positions that we get to. You cannot get there by yourself. You have to get a tremendous amount of help. And as you said, the Kansas City bar is very collegial. And so people are very supportive of what people's goals and ambitions. And I had enough relationships with different lawyers in town, people that were on opposing sides from me that were willing to speak and talk about my integrity and my honesty and my hard work that allowed me to eventually become appointed to the Associate Circuit bench in January of 2014.
Yeah. And for those that may not know, you don't live in St. Louis
Oh,
or
sure.
Kansas City. Outside in the state of Missouri, they elect judges in the smaller counties and the more rural areas. But in St. Louis and Kansas City, you're appointed.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a process you go through where you have to apply, and there's a commission that interviews all the candidates. And from that pool of candidates, they'll pick a few names, 3 names usually, that go to the governor, and the governor ends up usually appointing the judge.
Yeah.
And so that's why when you talk about it's so important to have support in your legal community and in your community, it's because of issues like that in Kansas City to get those jobs.
The nonpartisan court plan, when you talk about the commission that's going to recommend 3 names to the governor's office, it's comprised of two attorneys, 2 lay people that are appointed by the governor, and the chief judge of the appellate court in that district. The people that get appointed to these jobs usually are very involved in the community, in the legal community in some way, shape, or form. They've had a positive impact there, and that's the process. And I know I've been on the bench almost 11 or 12 years now, and they were saying even then, if they were to do partisan elections in the Kansas City area, they estimated it would cost about $1 million or $2 million. Easily. And that was 12 years ago to run those races. And it's Kansas City, St. Louis, Springfield, Platte County, Clay County have opted to have a nonpartisan court plan. And I think it works tremendously well. We have a very robust bench, and everyone has a different specialty background. And so they really complement one another on our bench.
Yeah, very well qualified. All of the judges in Jackson County and Kansas City Independence, that whole area that you all covered, just great folks and really good judges. So that brings us forward to now. You've been on the bench now, as you said, 11, 12 years. What does your day-to-day responsibilities look like? What are you doing as a circuit judge now in Jackson?
Sure. So we're a court of general jurisdiction. So we do everything. Right now, my current docket is civil, criminal, and domestic. So I'm doing those felony murder trials. I'm doing the complex civil cases, and then we call domestic divorces, child support, child custody. So a wide variety of things. And so we have a total of 39 judicial officers in Jackson County. And like you said, we are broken up between the downtown courthouse where I am in downtown Kansas City. We have another courthouse in Independence, which is actually our county seat. We have a family court that has 4 or 5 judicial officers over there. We have a criminal building that has some judicial officers over there. So we have all these different places, and there's times where you get reassigned different places. So I've had an opportunity to go to juvenile court for 2 years. I also had the opportunity and privilege of being our presiding judge. But right now, I'm focused just strictly trial work.
That's wonderful. And as part of that, and being a judge, I know you do still stay active in the legal community in Kansas City. Tell us a little bit about some of the projects you've been involved with, the organizations that you've worked with a lot in your time.
I'm a big believer in really encouraging people to consider careers in the law. I just didn't have that. And so I do a lot of work with school children, civic education, educating people about what it is the courts do, and doing just a lot of community-based work just to introduce people to the law, bringing young students into the courthouse, having mock trials, going out to schools and doing things like that, being involved in anyone who's willing to hear me speak about the law and just inform them. We had the Jackson County Bar Association partnered up with the courts, and we did it was called Law 101. And that went on for about, 10 years. When I got on the Associate Circuit bench, I would do a lot of landlord tenant eviction and small claims cases. And people often were pro se. they did not have attorneys. And so being able to do this law 101, where we go to community centers and talk to people about what remedies are available and what aren't available, to empower you to go into court, to know what you can ask for and what you couldn't ask for. And so certain things you might think you're entitled to by law, you're not. And so just to explain that to people is something I was really passionate about. And we did that for years. It was just a great way to get people informed about what the law does and what it doesn't do.
All right. So if you're talking to a 16, 17-year-old high school kid who's thinking about going to college, maybe thinking about going to college, what's your pitch? What's your pitch to try to sell them on you should consider a career in law?
You know what? Just try it and see. Just try it and see. Time is going to pass one way or the other. And so it can pass. You can be standing right where you are. You could pass. You could be way down the road, and just try it and see. And you may fall in love with something that is completely unexpected. I would encourage people and just be intellectually curious. Just be curious. Just say why or what is that about, and just go explore. And you might find yourself doing something that you had no idea you were interested in. And so I would challenge any young person out there to push past your own expectations, push past, and you will find yourself being able to do a lot of really good in this world. Really good.
I always tell people that the law is a very big tent. And I promise that whatever interest that you have, whether it's science, whether it's English, whatever your passion is, there is a place in the law tent for you.
That is true.
If you like science, you can work in patents. If you like writing, you can do appellate work and get to write all the time. We can put your passion to work anywhere in the law.
Absolutely. And I would tell folks, every lawyer doesn't go to a courthouse.
Yeah.
There's a tremendous amount of lawyers who will never set foot in a courthouse, and they're drafting real estate contracts or they're drafting policies at educational institutions. And so there are so many things that people can do in the law. Frankly, I think a law degree will open those doors to be a better thinker, how to advocate for things. And so that's needed in all areas, in all aspects. My focus has always been all those constitutional protections are so vastly important that our founding fathers built in.
I love that you talk about going out in the community and talking to people about how the system works and how the law works and the parameters, because I'm sure you find, as I find, and talking to a lot of people around the state, is that people don't always understand and usually don't understand how our system necessarily works or what necessarily the law allows them to do or doesn't allow them to do. And it's wonderful that you're out being part of that civic education push to educate people about how the system.
Oh, yeah. I mean, of the third branch of government, we're probably the most mysterious. And I say that because we're just not out in front, right? The executive branch is out in front. You see them as a leadership role, as they're supposed to be. They are executing the laws and effectuating things to happen. And the legislative branch also, they're very much out there because they're campaigning all the time and they're making those laws. And so as that third branch, people don't always see us as much, but you look at the Constitution and they're co-equal branches for a reason. And so I think that is something that people just don't always have an appreciation for. Like, how does that work? What does checks and balances look like? And how do these things actually apply to real world situations? And so once you sit down and say, let's talk about that and really delve into it, people say, oh, now I understand. Now I get it. I love for people to really comprehend what the law is and what we do. And again, what we don't do. We're not writing legislation. We're not writing laws. We don't run the police department. We don't get to say those things. That's not our role. And I just think it's important for people to know what we are as that branch of government.
And certainly part of this podcast is designed to help provide some of that education. And I'm very appreciative that you came on today to talk to us about some of those things. Now, I'm sure as part of that too, you get a lot of people who come to your court who do not have attorneys. A lot of people will have an attorney who can explain all these things to them, but I'm sure you also have a lot of people that come in and what we call pro se, representing themselves, trying to handle things on their own. Do you see a lot of pro se litigants in circuit court? And what is that experience like? And how do you handle that?
I do. And I'm seeing an increasing number of pro se litigants than I did 11, 12 years ago. In associate circuit court, I saw a tremendous amount. Lots of them. And I'm sure you have some judges that'll come on and talk about their work as an associate circuit judge. Anyone can file a lawsuit for anything for the most part. I don't know if it's going to survive to the end, but anyone can do that. And so I'm seeing more and more of our domestic cases, people representing themselves. So for their divorces, for their child support, child custody, there's a tremendous amount of people that are representing themselves. Sometimes they do very well and sometimes not so much. And I can't tell them to get a lawyer. I can always say, you might want to think about hiring counsel, because then they want me to become their lawyer and tell them what to do. Ethically, I cannot and I will not do that. And so it's one of those things, again, people think judges can do these things. No, judges have limitations and we cannot do those things. And I've seen folks in the criminal realm represent themselves. I had what's called post-conviction relief, when people are sentenced to prison and doing a tremendous amount of time, and they believe that something happened in the trial or with their guilty plea, that maybe their attorney was ineffective. I've seen them want to represent themselves, and those are pretty high stake cases. I've seen civil cases where people want to come in and represent themselves on both plaintiffs and defense. And again, it's their prerogative. Sometimes consider hiring a quality lawyer. Sometimes, not every time, but there are sometimes. One of the things that I've seen in my decade on the bench is there's a lot more forms that have been approved statewide that are very helpful to people and can help you draft your petition. Some of them are fill in the blank for divorces and again, child support, child custody, small claim, basic petitions, how to answer a lawsuit. There's so many more forms and so many more tools now than they had before. So I do feel like the documents that pro se litigants draft, the quality is better now than it was 5-10 years ago.
And certainly the 16th Circuit has a wonderful website that has a ton of forms on it. I, as a judge, even from out of state in Missouri, we used to go to your website all the time looking for forms. I know that those tools have improved, and certainly we're also seeing an influx of technology, both in our courthouses and in our courtrooms. And is technology something that you could see that's going to be helping pro se litigants?
Oh, definitely. I came in the era when they were moving from paper files to electronic files, and I feel like that we're in that second generation of electronic filing now. We're changing our system over. CaseNet, I'm sure you guys have talked about CaseNet on your podcast. It's a tool that anybody can use at this point, frankly, and there's so much information out there. But I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think it's just going to become even broader than that. I don't know where the technology will take us, but I do think that it is something that has become part of our lives as courts, especially during COVID. It was definitely something that we had to use from time to time. So I think that's the tip of the iceberg. I think invite me back in 10 years. It'll look very different in 10 years. I really believe that.
In 10 years, you and I may not be sitting in a room doing this. We might be
true.
in different sides of the world, and it may be just like we're sitting in the same room together.
I don't know where the future of the law is. Our technology and the law are going to submerge, but I know it's happening. It's happening, and we have to embrace it.
We're all just going to have to hold on for the ride. There is no doubt about that. I've truly enjoyed our conversation today. Is there anything else about the life of a circuit judge in Jackson County, Missouri that you want folks to know about that we haven't talked about?
You know what? I have had the privilege of having some wonderful jobs in this legal career of mine. I really have. I've enjoyed every aspect of it. But to truly just serve the people, there's nothing like it. We're tasked with being disinterested parties to help people resolve disputes. And that's what I focus on. Is I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't have a vested interest in the outcome in one side or the other prevailing, but just following the law, using the Constitution and the law to see what the outcome should be. I think that's where stability comes from in courts and in communities. That's what my job is. And so people don't always like the outcome, but they respect the fact that you followed the process and you gave them a fair shake. You want people to be heard. I do everything on the bench. Our courtrooms are all open to the public. I would tell people, if you're curious about what happens in any circuit court, go down to your local courthouse and just spend an afternoon there. And you will see some of the most interesting things. They're public places. Come on down. There's nothing mysterious. Come on down and watch what it is that we do. We have 39 jurists in our jurisdiction. And I think every one of them would tell you that they try and make the best decision every single day to really help people resolve cases amicably. And that's, I think, a great contribution to society.
I couldn't agree more. And that is a wonderful answer and a wonderful place to leave our discussion on the legal side. I have one last question I'm going to ask you. I ask everybody this.
Okay.
What's your favorite thing that you have seen lately? It could be a TV show or a movie or a painting or a sunset or just anything. What's the best thing you've seen?
So my favorite book, I read it from time to time. Is it Anna Karenina?
Eric.
Yeah, so different. Tolstoy. Love, one of my favorite books. I've been going back and revisiting parts of that. It's a wonderful book. It talks about people's relationship in their homes, with their spouse, with their children, with the government, how government interacts with one another, how merchants interact with storekeepers. There's so much in there. It's a timeless story. So if you have a few months of nothing else to do.
It's not light reading.
It's not light reading, but it's awesome reading. It's awesome reading about the human condition.
Yeah.
That's probably one of my favorite things to do. I told you I was a nerd. I like to read.
I love it. I love it. We'll start a book club next.
Yeah.
That's the next podcast.
Okay, sounds
Judge
good.
Otto, thank you so much
Thank
for
you
taking
for
the time to be
having
with us
me.
today. We really appreciate it. And
Yeah.
we want to thank you for joining us today on our podcast. Remember, if you've been enjoying what you're listening to, don't forget to like and subscribe everywhere that you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube. Also, don't forget to follow Supreme Court of Missouri and Missouri Courts on Instagram, Facebook, and everywhere else that you can find us. We appreciate you being with us today. With nothing else to discuss, this podcast is adjourned. Thank you, folks. And we're out.